Looking past the surface of a museum to its inner workings entails going beyond a summary of the museum's design and content. In doing a museum review, you should examine the organization's mission, organizational structure, collections, and exhibits to reveal the museum's challenges, opportunities, and underlying assumptions regarding its guiding principles. The following guidelines can help you with your critical analysis of a museum's organizational purpose and philosophy. Your review should include the following. First, you're going to want to give an overview of the museum. Then, take a look at the collections. What is the museum's mission? Critically assess the museum's architecture. What is the museum's ideology or episteme? What is the museum's stance on education? Who are its students or publics, and what does the museum teach? What are the organization's educational goals, and how do they relate to the museum's history, vision, and mission? If you do a critical assessment of these 6 areas, it can tell you a lot about a museum, its operations, its management, and its direction. And this model is useful not just for outside assessments, it can be used internally for management audits, strategic planning, and even organizational re-engineering. First, in doing an overview, you want to examine the basic facts about the museum and its mission, the who, what, when, where, why, and how. Give the museum's full name, its location, and hours. What individuals or organizations founded the museum, when and why? What events or conditions in history shaped the museum? Collect brochures, guides, and visit websites that can provide you with additional information. In looking at the collections, consider what objects constitute the museum's holdings and how were the collections formed. Is the museum organized around art, history, science, technology, or a specific cultural perspective? How are the collections used? For example, is this a research museum where the objects are made available for study? Are artifacts used as evidence central to the museum's displays, or are they used simply as illustrations to outline a certain historical narrative? How does the museum connect its collections to its primary publics? How are the artifacts interpreted? What time periods and geographic areas are covered in the museum? How does the museum respond to change over time? For example, if the museum deals with a specific subject matter during a specific time period, are the exhibitions made contemporary and relevant to today? In looking at the organization's mission, you want to assess what arguments the museum's mission and displays make. Are certain judgments made by the exhibitions? Is the mission clear? Is it coherent? Are topics that you think should be covered by the museum's exhibits excluded? If so, why do you think that's the case? Are there topics being covered by the museum in its exhibitions that you think are really outside the scope of its mission? Look at the museum's stated objectives and assess whether or not the organization's objectives are being met. What themes or ideas are displayed in the major exhibitions, and what kinds of topics do the exhibits address? In looking at architecture, you're going to want to evaluate the building's interior and exterior space. Comment on how the style, form, the materials used, construction, and design of the building contribute to or detract from the museum and its purpose. Is the architecture and design elements, are they appropriate? In looking at ideology, you want to examine whether or not the museum displays certain assumptions about social class or the nature of power. Are there issues of race, ethnicity, and gender, religion explored explicitly, implicitly, or are they not addressed at all? How does this fit within the museum's mission or philosophy, and what theories of history shape or influence the museum's approach or episteme? Arguably, most museums see themselves as serving an educational purpose in one way or another. In America, this idea goes back to the scientific revolution and the Enlightenment ideals that informed the founding of our nation's first museum, Charles Wilson Peele's Philadelphia Museum, founded in Philadelphia Hall at the turn of the 19th century. So in doing your review, you must ask, to what extent does the museum balance education and entertainment? For example, a university museum will generally focus more on educating a university public or college students, faculty, artists, museum professionals, and researchers. Exhibitions, therefore, might be less geared towards entertainment and more towards research. The mission of the museum would align more with the mission of the university. This would be different, however, for a children's museum. So ask yourself, how does the museum's education programming advance or impair the museum's mission, goals, and objectives as it relates to its history and purpose? As an education institution, what are the museum's strengths and weaknesses? How do the museum's strengths and or weaknesses or challenges and opportunities compare with the challenges and opportunities of a similar kind of museum? So again, if you frame your critical analysis of a museum around these 6 simple guidelines, you can walk away with a better understanding of a museum's purpose and effectiveness. Just remember OCMAIE. Overview, collections, mission, architecture, ideology, and education. For additional online lectures or information about the James E. Lewis Museum of Art at Morgan State University, please visit us at www.jalma.org.